good people? What is going on? My name is Desmond. If you've been here at the Michigan football podcast at the Voice of College Football, or you've probably seen me before, but I have a very special guest that is with me today, my man Dre. And just to do a quick introduction, and I'll kick it to you. Dre and I actually do a podcast together called the Dre and Des Podcast, which you can find on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're kind of all over. But Dre, please give us an intro, kind of let us know who you are, and go from there, man.
Yeah. Well, for one, hello everyone. I'm so glad I get to have this opportunity to talk Michigan football. Obviously, I'm a big Michigan fan. So for one, I just want to say thank you to Mark Rogers for the opportunity. Thank you, Desmond, for the opportunity to talk with you, man. We do this off stream or broadcast or whatever all the time. This is our normal conversation, but I look forward to being able to let people in and how we talk and how we see things, and hopefully be able to provide some insight or a different perspective. I've been a Michigan fan my whole life. My grandfather, at the age of 3 years old, got me one of those replica Michigan football uniforms. I may actually post it one day.
I've seen that photo before. Yeah. You've sent it to me before.
Right. And I've been hooked ever since. And just like the rest of my fellow Michigan fans, we've had our share of heartbreaks. We had some highs, definitely a lot of lows lately, and looking forward to this evening.
Yeah. So we talk on, I would say, a daily basis. And so essentially, like, for us, kind of the podcast and just talking sports, like that's something that we do all the time. Like funny quick story is, Dre and I actually used to work together. And basically before work, we would call each other while we're commuting into work. And then when we would leave work, we would call each other and talk, sports and football and basketball and all that. So we've always kind of done it. And then, with the pandemic hit, we were just like, you know what, like, let's start to record this. Let's put it in a podcast and get rolling. So, so we do this all the time. It's a lot of fun, So
put it this way, I can't speak for Desmond, but my wife is definitely like, well, you talk to Desmond more than you talk to me. At least on the phone. So, I'm like, whatever. But it's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get going, I would like to encourage you to please like and subscribe. The super chat is available, and you always have, you can donate to the cause with Mark Rogers, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. So just search Mark Rogers TV. So, and then also tomorrow at 8 p.m., I believe, Eastern Standard Time, Mark will have his weekly call-in show. So great time for you to call in, talk to Mark, kind of, jump in the chat and talk a little bit of football and go from there. So, Dre, so we are talking about Michigan season preview today. Before we get into that, kind of let us know give me the state of the union on Michigan football.
The state of the union is a question mark. It's a huge question mark. And it's, if you would ask me this, 6-7 years ago, what would be, if I got that question, like, hey, 6-7 years ago from now, 2014 when Harbaugh took over, and I would get asked that question 7 years from that point, would I be expecting to say a question mark? I would say absolutely not. And I say question mark because obviously personnel-wise, you had turnover, players leaving via transfer portal, players going to the NFL, but you also had turnover, in the staffing. You had an overhaul of your defensive side of the ball. And you have a defensive coordinator who's not as experienced as Don Brown, like Don Brown or not, in his scheme, the aggressive, full-on man-to-man all the time, never changing it up and bringing in some zone schemes, using a viper position, blitzing all the time. No matter if you liked it or not, it was statistically effective. for, let's say, 8 out of the 12 games in season, unless you're playing a team with comparable talent. But now that's gone. And it's what I wanted. It's what a lot of Michigan fans wanted. But now that leads us to the unknown, right? And also, what's the identity of this program? 7 years in, I don't know what Michigan football stands for under Jim Harbaugh. You want to talk about Bo? Fine. You want to talk about Lloyd Carr? Fine. But under Jim Harbaugh, what is one consistent, good trend, good on the field product that you see every year? Is it toughness, the ability to stay in games, which you're in a haymaker fight? You get punched, you can stay in the game. I haven't seen that. I see them wilt, right? Is it great recruits, right? We're constantly recruiting the most athletic kids in the country. We do well. Don't get yourself. We do well, but we're not in a top 5 echelon of college football. Is it? I don't know what it is, right? So I will say the state of the union is we don't know much, and we don't know what to expect because we don't have much of a consistent trend, right? It's been a lot of roller coaster ride under Jim Harbaugh's tenure at Michigan. So that's the way I see it.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I think for all Michigan fans that, and I believe it was January that, it was announced that Jim Harbaugh, I believe he flew into the little private Ann Arbor airport. We were actually together when that was happening. We were both working, and it was, we worked in Ann Arbor, so it was legitimately to talk at work. But when that happened, we had plenty of Michigan fans that we worked with that, they were talking. I mean, Nick Saban is shaking in his boots. Urban Meyer is shaking in his boots. Antonio. Like, we're going to win the Big Ten pretty soon, national championship. And Jim Harbaugh had that cachet when he walked in. He was successful with the 49ers. He was successful at Stanford before that. And it really, San Diego State, like he had done really well. So it was one of those things where, as a fan, you could have that excitement. You could have that, that energy that, we're having a turning of the guards, because at that time, Brady Hoke had kind of ran out his welcome, just wasn't doing well. So it was understandable, the confidence that Michigan fans had. And it hasn't materialized to what most Michigan fans thought it would at this point.
There was a video, I never forget this. There was a video, like a hype video before Harbaugh's first season. And they do it every year. I don't know what channel it is, but they do it every year. And it had like the Dark Knight type of theme music in the background. And, of course, throughout the video, they show a Michigan football highlights. Looks great, fun, right? A lot of nostalgia for me and my fellow Michigan fans. And towards the end, it has like dun, like a lot of like almost like a darkness villain type of background music as they show Urban looking all focused. They show D'Antonio looking all focused, and then the music kind of brightens up. And as Jim Harbaugh, I guess maybe it's during spring practice, kind of looking around with this huge grin on his face, like I know the answer, I'm the solution, right? And it's incredible that from that point, and all to give him credit, look, the first 2 years, it looked like this thing is on the right track, and we're about to be competing for Big Ten titles and possible every now and then, to be realistic, playoff appearances for the foreseeable future. And it has not been that way. Have they been close a couple times? Sure. But it's just gone off the rails lately, and a lot of turmoil and a lot of chaos. More than it has been like a steady ride. And it's shocking, but hey, we're here, and we'll take it how it is and try to see, what does a current state of affairs look like in the future.
Yeah. So, we had talked before a little bit earlier today about how we wanted to go through the, kind of the season preview, the prediction, and talk about what, how exactly we want to put it together. So we just kind of talked about talking about what prediction as far as record goes.
Right.
And, we don't really want to go game by game just because of, like you had mentioned, the difficulty it is to say, what October 2nd is going to look like, today. And I agree. That's a tough thing to do. But
We do it
first
all the
thing
time, right? In sports, we
right,
do it all
yeah,
the time.
exactly.
NFL,
Over unders.
especially
Yep.
in NFL, like, hey, new we're Lions fans. New Lions rollout, right? Hey, what's the record gonna look like? And we played the schedule game, and it's fun. It's a lot more fun when you think you have a good team. But it's normal. But I think in college football, it's a little bit more difficult because I think that you can have quicker turnarounds and things change so drastically in college football because you're dealing with the youth, right? You can have a team that's very young, mostly freshmen and sophomores at the beginning of a season, and they're struggling. But they're not struggling because of talent, they're struggling because of experience. And it's all comment there. And by the end of the season, they're starting to roll a little bit and they're taking steps forward. So if you would have played the schedule game earlier on, you would say, okay, this team's going to be bad record wise. But then it turns out later in the season, they win some games that you don't expect, right? Because they've gotten better and they've learned. So that's why in college football it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like you said, when you're dealing with kids, I mean, from year to year, I mean, you can have a guy who doesn't play much in one year and come back the next year, and be a big impact type player. So
Right.
It can definitely change from year to year, week to week. So I agree with that. As far as record goes, I mean, what just kind of throwing it out there. I'm gonna put you on the spot early on. What record are you predicting? And then we can kind of go through the wins and where you think the losses are coming.
Man, I feel like I'm just about to, like my fellow Michigan fans out there, like right now, like kids on Christmas Eve waiting to open up their gifts, and I'm about to be the person to deliver coal. But I actually, as of now, based on what I see and what I know, which is very little because of the whole question mark thing, right? Personnel and coach turnover and lack of identity. I have them at 6-6.
Wow.
Dun dun dun. I know that sounds very pessimistic. Let me be very, very clear. Very clear. I don't like doing that. I wish this is not a facade. I really am a Michigan. Don't kid yourself. I am a true Michigan fan. I wish I could come on these airwaves and say 10-2, 11-1, Big Ten title game appearance. Maybe we win it, and this is the year. Year 7. We missed out the previous 6 years, but this is the year. Last year was COVID, and it was an anomaly. I can't say that because I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it, Desmond. And when I look at, I know, and the reason why is because, for one, it's the opponents that we're playing, and the Big Ten East is no longer a cakewalk. It's no longer a big three, right? Maybe about 3-4 years ago, it was, especially in the Big Ten East. Now, we did have the crossover Wisconsin, but I'm not going to count that in terms of the Big Ten East. It was us, Michigan. It was Ohio State, and MSU has been kind of down the last few years, and it was Penn State, right? Those 3. Mm-hmm. And then you can throw MSU in there at some point. 4. Those were the 4, right? The other games were cakewalks. Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, Purdue, Wisconsin's back and forth every year, right? I no longer can say that in respect to those other teams. It's not just about Michigan. It's also about what I see with the other teams. What Tom Allen has done in Indiana, that's no facade. They are real. Mm-hmm. They are real in the context of being a legit contender for this conference. I mean, you have to give credit. They have an NFL caliber quarterback. Now, I'm not saying Michael Penix Jr. is like going to be a top quarterback pick in the NFL draft, but he is very talented. Mm-hmm. And Tom Allen has done a fantastic job. He's energetic. His players run through a wall for him. Those are the type of coaches that build programs, no matter where they are. And then they eventually go on to more prestigious universities, and their name gets even bigger. Most people may not know about Tom Allen because he coaches for the Indiana Hoosiers, which is a basketball school. But he's done a great job. So it's tough. It's tough for me with all these question marks to say we're going to pull a rabbit out of our hat, and we're going to go and we're going to beat Indiana. We're going to go and beat MSU at East Lansing. How can I say that? Mel Tucker barely had 2 months on campus with the effects of COVID and having to cease operations on their campus. And he came into our barn. I know there wasn't a crowd, but still, they came into our barn and beat us in a convincing fashion. It wasn't the trouble with the snap game. You know, It wasn't that kind of moment. We got beat. We didn't like it badly. You know, so how can I say we're going to go to East Lansing, you know, with all these question marks about our team and beat them? They have some too, but I can't give them that leeway, right? Yeah. You know, Penn State, we play at Penn State. I know I put more stock in the whiteout more than you do, but I'm sure that game will be a whiteout. It always is. We never win. We never win. And I know Penn State
on the road, yeah. And that's a weird dynamic that Penn State and Michigan have, that essentially the home team is going to win and win big. Like the crazy part is it's not ever a close game. You know, in recent history, it's been either Michigan is blowing out Penn State because Michigan's at home, or it's vice versa. It's, you know, Saquon Barkley is going crazy, and, you know, it's the whiteout like you mentioned, and you know, it's a blowout on the other end. So that's interesting. So do you have Michigan beating Washington?
Actually, I don't, and I'll tell you why. I was on the fence about that, and on my I printed out the schedule. I have stars, well, asterisks actually, next to 3 games, and those are games that I call the swing games. So those can be games that I'm on the fence about, but as of now, I said win or loss. Actually, I put loss for those games initially, but I can be swayed, right? And it's close for me. And Washington is 1 loss. Only reason I say that is not that I fear Washington or I think their personnel is better or coaching is necessarily better than ours in Michigan, but it's more internal that I have questions with. You know, like, that's only the second week. If we were playing Washington week 4, I would put that as a win. Playing Washington week 2 after 1 ramp-up week versus Western Michigan with Cade McNamara and a lot of new additions, I'm just not quite comfortable saying that game is a gimme. And look, maybe I sleep on it. I change that to a win. Like I said, it's pretty close to a toss-up for me. But coming off only 1 week of ramp-up with a lot of new players, it's a little tough for me. Now, I do understand Washington has to fly from the West Coast
cross country.
Right. I know that's no easy picnic, and I actually would put that in Michigan's favor. But I'm a little bit scared not having enough time to ramp up for that game.
Now, see, to me, that's why I think it's so that Western Michigan game cannot be a typical, essentially big guy versus little guy game. Right. Like, you need, and I did a video about this, and we've talked about it too before in the past with Shea Patterson, where, you know, I didn't feel like in those early games where, you know, Michigan had a clear advantage, you know, but it was before like the Wisconsins and the Ohio State games, like you had essentially a lot of room for error. So you could throw the ball a lot to get your quarterback more comfortable in that system, so that when you do get to the Wisconsins and Ohio States and Indianas of the world, like, you're ready to lean on that guy. Like, it's not you're going into the game wondering if he can run your offense at a high level. Like, you already know. And that's why I think that Western game is going to be so important. Like, if you're Jim Harbaugh, your ideal situation would be post-game, a reporter asking you, Jim, you were up 50-0 at halftime. Like, why did you keep throwing the ball in the third quarter?
Right. Like, they should be criticizing. They should be criticizing your ethics, right?
Yeah. Like why did you keep throwing the ball? Like, what happened? What did you know? That's ideal. Like, that is ideal because you as a head coach, and that's why it is so difficult at these bigger programs and the ones that do have the spotlights, is because you have to have the foresight of keeping your guys focused on today, but also having the foresight of looking towards, you know, next week and weeks down the line, where you understand that, okay, we need to call plays based on there's going to be a time in this season that we need to lean on Cade. Let's get him comfortable now so that when we get to that moment, right, where it's not a toss-up. Like, it's just muscle memory at that point. So that's why I do think that
the issue with that is also the optics, because I do believe coaches, especially a guy like Harbaugh, in the situation he's in right now, they're worried about the optics. They really are. Like this past off season, there are a lot of people who were surprised that he got a extension. They thought that this was going to be it. And by all means, there was a lot of smoke to that, but I do believe there was some fire as well. I don't believe that Ward Manuel and the Michigan administration is happy with Jim Harbaugh. I think they're kind of in a stuck situation. And I do believe that with all these question marks about his coaching acumen and the state of the team, that he will be more worried about making sure the team looks good rather than making sure the team is addressing key issues going forward. For example, you have Cade out there. Cade has to get the repetitions with throwing the ball down the field, right? Has to get the rhythm with his with his receivers. Okay, if he throws a pick, Jim, don't panic, right? Of course, you have to be smart in the game. You have to win the game. But you have to be willing to be aggressive and make mistakes, because more than likely you're going to win this game because you're that much better than Western Michigan. But you have to have the repetitions with the things that are going to be necessary when you're playing against the better opponents like Washington, where you're not going to just run it down their throat. Okay? It's not going to work. So there's no point in you going up 30 points versus Western Michigan and you're just doing ground and pound all day.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That doesn't help you in the long game of the season. So, and I'm just worried about the optics. Like, I want Cade to look good. I don't want Cade to throw any picks. You know what I'm saying? And that's why we'll worry about them not doing that.
For me, I would rather Cade throw maybe 2 picks and you fling it all over and still win the game versus him only getting 15 pass attempts and you just run the ball down Western Michigan's throat. Because I think if that's the case, you do have a chance of losing to Washington. I picked them to beat Washington. I just think Michigan's roster and their talent is better than Washington, and I think it is that much of a gap to where they're going to win. But you're not going to beat them just running the ball. Like, that's just not. I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, look, Trestle ball, and that's not what Harbaugh does, but Trestle ball. I say Trestle ball because of the ideology of what you're doing from an offensive standpoint. It's a lot of a ball control, managing the clock, right? No matter if you're that much better than a team or not, right? But that can get you in danger, because even if you're better than a team, college football, especially nowadays, like it's hard to stop teams. It just is.
Yes.
Even if you're bigger and stronger, faster than they are, it's just hard to do it. That's the beauty of the spread offense, right? And why offense is scoring is so high now. So you really have to keep your foot on the gas pedal all the time. And I understand. I saw Casey's comment there. Yes, Michigan is bigger inside and out compared to Washington, but it's about making sure that you're not being conservative with your play calling. That's the main point I'm getting at here. Don't be conservative at all. You want to run the ball, and I'm not saying they can't run the ball against Washington. I'm saying it's not going to work when they know you're going to do it. Because this is what Harbaugh has done historically, especially when they did the pro-style offense. Okay, you can know I'm running the football. You see Khalid Hill back there? You see number 80? Yeah. And also Ben Mason, 42. You see them back there?
Oh, yeah.
I know you know we're going to run the football. I don't care. We're running it down. We're going to run it down your throat. And it's my guys versus yours. That's great. It's tough to do that when a defense knows you're going to do that, right? They can design a scheme that can limit that, or at least have some success, even if they're a lot smaller than you are. Okay, it's just tough to do. So my point is that be aggressive. Don't worry about mistakes, because it's going to pay dividends more down the line.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm trying to think. So if Washington is loss number 1, I would assume Wisconsin is your second one.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And look, that's typical. Goes back to history. Goes back to lack of identity. Goes back to just the overall a song that is played every time Michigan goes to Wisconsin. It's ugly. It's ugly. It's brutal, and our quarterbacks get hurt. That's been that's been the episode.
That is a good point.
Yeah, that's been the episode in the song of going to Wisconsin. And the reason why is because Wisconsin, no matter, and I respect them so much, no matter who the head coach is, no matter what personnel's out there, it could be a quarterback as good as Russell Wilson, or it could be a much lesser guy. It could be a Jonathan Taylor out there, it could be a Melvin Gordon out there, etc. Right? But they're going to be consistent with the run game. They're going to be very physical with their offensive line. In defense, they're going to be disciplined. That's it. Now, they're going to fluctuate in talent. Some Wisconsin teams are better than others, and by all means, Michigan has beat them at home a couple of times as well. But going there, when Camp Randall is jumping around, and it's loud, and it's that fall weather, and it's going to be man ball, we tend to get punched in the mouth. It happens every time, and that's okay, because Wisconsin's no slouch. But what Harbaugh's teams have shown is that once they get punched in the mouth, they do not typically respond.
Yeah.
Don't respond. And I'm sorry, when you're playing against a team with comparable talent, you're going to get punched in the mouth every now and then. I never forget. No secret. I think you said it many times, Desmond, you're an Alabama fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget, what was it, 2 years ago, Alabama's playing this big game at Ole Miss. And the very first play, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yep.
It's a streak down the field. For one, for the people out there, imagine, I'm sure you've seen SEC football, you've seen Alabama play. Everybody wants to beat Bama, right? The very first play, Ole Miss hits a streak down the field for like a 60, 70-yard touchdown.
Yep.
And the Grove is going absolutely nuts, right? That's about as much you can punch a team in the mouth. Even Alabama.
Oh, in first play? Yeah,
first play
touchdown.
of offense. Bam. Alabama proceeds to respond with touchdown, stop, touchdown, stop, touchdown. And I think they go up 21-7. And no, I'm not saying Michigan is Alabama, and nor do I expect them to be, but it's the principle of no matter what happens, where we are, punch is fine. We're going to get back up. We're going to correct that mistake, and we're going to go right back at you. We're going to exchange haymakers. Mm-hmm. And I have not seen that. Maybe I saw it of, I think, Penn State 2 years ago, of a Michigan team on the road against a really good team. So there's no way in the world, especially with a team that's inexperienced, that I can pick them to go to Wisconsin. And by the way, I think they have the better quarterback in Graham Mertz, by the way. To go and win. I just can't do it. Not without just being a fanatic and just saying go blue. Of course, I'm doing that, but I don't feel comfortable saying they're going to win. Can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a difference of being a fan. There's a difference of being a fan and then just being a fanatic, right? And it's not that you're going to root against them, right? Obviously not. You're still going to root for Michigan.
Okay, yes. Even going into the expectation that we're not going to probably win the game, I'm going to be upset. I'm not happy about that.
Yeah, that's like you said. We'll see what happens. I think it's understandable. And yeah, like we said, Graham Mertz. I mean he's a top 3 quarterback, would you say, in the Big Ten?
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, guys, think about this. I'm talking to you guys who are watching this right now. Graham Mertz was a true freshman last year, and he had to sit out a little bit due to COVID. He caught COVID, and also COVID protocol, had to sit out a few weeks. But he didn't look out of place at all. And if you go back and you watch some of those Wisconsin games, a lot of broadcasters who watched him will also say that this guy, he doesn't look like the typical Wisconsin quarterback. No, don't think about Russell Wilson. He's an anomaly. But the typical Wisconsin quarterback, he looks like a guy who doesn't have to rely on the run game to win your game. If you need him to throw the ball, okay, I can throw the ball. I can do that. Yeah. And that's just not a recipe for success for Michigan It's hard. I mean, it's hard enough to win road games. It's even harder to win a road game when you don't have you have the lesser quarterback.
Yeah, agreed. So rolling on through. So if that's loss number 2, then do you have them going? Do you have them finishing the season 0-4?
No, I don't. And I think I know a game that you put as a loss that I put as a win, probably because of your respect of the guy's brother. But anyway, I will get to that. Anyway, no, I actually have them. I'll just give you my losses since we're just doing it that way. Okay.
Okay.
I have them losing to Washington, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Indiana, and excuse me, Michigan State, Indiana, Penn State, and Ohio State. But I have them winning at Maryland.
Okay.
So yeah, the next loss will be MSU, and I just go into that. I assume that's what you want to ask about, right? Or am I wrong?
Well, so we'll go into that, but I also had another follow-up question because to me, if that's the case, if the schedule works out the way that you said, this is going to be Jim Harbaugh's last year.
Yes. I was waiting for yes. I mean,
okay.
It should.
I think a Michigan State loss. I mean, unless somehow that's the only game that you lose, and just the odds are just not in the odds of that happening are essentially zero. That you would, beat everybody. You're beating Wisconsin, Northwestern. You somehow lose to Michigan State, but then you beat Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State. I don't think that is even possible. But to me, a Michigan State loss this year will spell, without a doubt, the end of Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw with the extension, and what people have to pay attention to is not. Yes, I'm sorry. Losing to MSU again. And here's why, and I'll tell that person why. Well, I'll put it to you this way: how, after losing to Mel Tucker and MSU at home, with you having the consistent, you had the continuity on your staff. You had an offensive coordinator, no matter if you like him or not, returned. You had Don Brown, your defensive coordinator, who has returned. Right? You had a lot more of the retention of players that they didn't have. Right? Yet they came to your home and they beat you convincingly. So how can I, even though I know MSU really shook up that roster, Mel Tucker really shook up that roster this past offseason, how can I pick you to go to MSU, right? Especially now with fans, and win that game? There's nothing that will make sense that's tangible besides hope. And it's great to have hope. You should always have a little bit of hope, but there's nothing tangible that I can point to and say, you know what, that's going to be the reason why we win that game. I can't think of one. Besides go blue. Right, you know what I'm saying? It's tough, so I can't do it.
So, what would you say? So, playing devil's advocate, what would you say about? Because I believe last year when you played Michigan State, Cade wasn't the starter yet. I think it was still Joe Milton, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe Joe started that game. I think you're right about that. Yeah.
So, if devil's advocate would say that Cade, in just the limited time that he had, played way better than Joe Milton outside of early parts of the Minnesota game for Joe Milton. So what would your response be to that?
My response would be like, was it way better or was it slightly more efficient? Because when I think of Cade's play, I think, well, Joe, gosh, I mean, he made so many mistakes with missing guys, down the field. He was very inaccurate, didn't make great decisions, and didn't have a lot of good ball security. However, Cade was more or less, I thought, like a game manager type, right? He was very accurate at times, right? He just did enough to make sure the offense continued to move, and he did a good job. They put up some points versus Rutgers, where the team ran onto the field like they won a Big Ten title, but that's a conversation for another day. Look, he did a solid job. And by all means, there's a chance he could take a step this year. But even one step, I don't think that's enough for me to say Cade McNamara is going to be the difference based on what I know, not by what I think could happen, based on what I know from what I saw last year, that it's enough to go to MSU and to win, especially because what should have made the difference last year, everything's in turmoil, right? You got a quarterback controversy, right? What should have made a difference year 6 under Jim Harbaugh was your culture, right? And in your play calling too, right? Because you had the continuity, right? You would think you also had the advantage from a schematic standpoint. That should have made the difference, and it didn't. If anything, you got beat worse than anybody expected. And I can't do it.
That the culture thing I think is a great point, because it was a very that was a Halloween game, I remember, because we were, I was watching the game with my family and a couple friends before, took our daughter trick-or-treating, but it was just odd seeing Michigan State's high energy level and like Michigan just not matching that at all. Like it was extremely odd. And like first, there's a couple big plays, like there were big defensive stops that Michigan State had made, and they were just jacked up. And I turned to a friend and I'm just like, Michigan doesn't seem to have like the juice today. Like, I don't know what exactly is going on, but that was a very worrisome thing to watch. And on the flip side, I will say is I feel like the guys that were at, Big Ten Media Day especially for Michigan, did the things that they said made me think that the culture may be changing. And we'll see, obviously time will tell, and in hindsight's 2020, but I think it might be changing and going in the right direction. But we'll see. But yeah, the point of culture is definitely important, because that's the foundation of everything that you do.
Well, yeah. And look, man, having players, key players, especially your best players that can set the example, it's very important for the continuity of the culture in your locker room and in your program. But it all starts with the head coach, right? And you've had, great, I believe, locker room guys. Chase Winovich is Mr. Michigan. Walking around with the golden locks, looks sweet, hustle guy. Got the Revenge Tour T-shirt on. And they had a good season his last year. I think that's the year they 2018, something like that.
Yeah, that was what Ohio State lost, and
don't remind me of that. The 60
was that Notre Dame? No, what was the?
That was the year they lost Notre Dame and they went on a 10-game winning streak. But my point is that it all starts with the head coach. So I mean, it's great. I like Aiden. He kind of fits that Chase Winovich mold to me, even though I think he's a little bit more talented. And that I do believe he truly cares about winning. I do believe he's in there trying to inspire his teammates. But I just worry about, sometimes it's like a cloud, right? When there's like high energy and juice in a program, you can feel it. But also when the program has a sense of pressure and chaos, you can feel that too. And I just don't know if that is something that you can overwrite and change in one off season. I just don't know that, especially when you had to turn over in the coaching staff that you did.
Yeah, I mean, you can hope. I do. You look at other programs that are, I mean, you look at other programs and they're able to do it. Like, especially, right. I think we can both be clear that, Michigan is not Alabama, but every year, Alabama is getting their, coordinators poached and position coaches are getting promoted at different schools. And the one constant is Nick Saban. Like this year's a little different because Pete Golding, their DC, is staying, but essentially, like if you truly have that culture built, like it's not just the staff, right? It's as the head coach, you have selected the correct guys that have that mindset that you want, and you can build upon that so that the guys are already in the locker room, right? I already have Chase Winovich in the locker room who's telling young guys how we practice, who's telling young guys, how we talk to the media if they do get that exposure. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's everywhere. It's how you go to class. It's how you know what I mean? It's how you carry yourself. it's in a lot of different things and not just the coaching staff, so that part is on Jim Harbaugh. Like, he's got to do a better job of just implementing that culture and really building on it and helping it manifest, so that it does go through, every player and on that team. So we'll see how things work out, but man, so you say, oh, Jimmy's gone, huh?
Yeah. I just don't know how or why, for that matter, that the administration can spin that to the fan base, that it makes sense. I mean, year 7 of a coach's tenure, you shouldn't be going through a total rebuild. I know some people will say that Brian Kelly, had to rebuild things in Notre Dame, but they didn't bottom out like the way Michigan's bottom out lately. Like it's sometimes you can feel where things just aren't working out, and you can see it hit its apex and then start to decline, right? And I think that's what you've seen over the last few years. Like you've seen the apex, which I thought was 2015 to 2018 or so, which is like the best of this team, the best chance. You talk about all the time. When those windows open up, you got to be able to walk through them. 2016, when they're at Ohio State, was number 2 versus number 3, and it was a hard-fought game. It was a tough game to lose as a Michigan fan, and we lost in double overtime, if I'm not mistaken. But the winner of that game goes on to play in the Big Ten title game and to make an appearance in the college football playoff. They didn't get it done, but they were there. They were close.
And I need to jump in for 1 second.
Go ahead.
When that was Wilton Speight was starting that game, correct?
Yes, he was.
The pick 6 that he threw on Michigan's 5-yard line or whatever it was, that was Davion Smith's fault. He missed his blitz protection, missed picking up the blitzing linebacker, who was the guy that hit Wilton Speight and gave him a bad throw. Because the guy that he was actually throwing to was open. No. It just needs to be said. It just needs to be said.
Okay, I'm saying
that was on
I don't like
your
the play
senior
call.
running back.
You're close towards the end of the half. Okay, I just run the football. You have the lead. We're in the horseshoe. Okay, let's get to halftime, regroup, and get back out there. And look, I know
that doesn't sound like a winning attitude to me. That doesn't sound like a winning attitude to me. That sounds like you're trying not to lose. You're not trying to win. Because if he hits that crosser and say you get a field goal on that possession, so you go from your -5, let's call it, that you got the ball, and you go on a scoring drive and get 3 points on that. I mean it
helps, but hold on, but to me, if I wouldn't make that same call if it's third quarter, if it's fourth quarter, where we're close to halftime. I'm going to make that call based on the scenario, where we're playing, and how the game is going. At that point, Michigan had all of the momentum, right?
Why not keep it rolling? But hold on. Let me stop you real quick, because what you said earlier was you said you have to keep your pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
So so just in saying that, so you're saying Michigan has all the momentum. But the thing is the thing that I think about is, if you have all the momentum and it is getting close to halftime, that's when you can catch a defense off guard. You know what I mean? You can catch somebody sleeping. So
do you have the personnel for that? So here's the thing. Yeah.
If your running back picks up the block, you absolutely do.
For one, when I made that statement earlier, I was talking about earlier in the season when you're playing against lesser opponents, right? and you're trying to ramp up for games like this. 2, this is the last game of the season. We already know what Wilton Speight in this offense is. Now, he did a solid job that year. He was good. He was solid, right? And we have some really good receivers like Amari Darboh and J.U. Cheston on the outside, right? So they were a solid to good offense, but they weren't very prolific in terms of scoring. So it's it's also by then having a very good grasp of the type of team that you have. And if you know that your quarterback is solid, but he can make mistakes, and the ingredient to your success that season was ball control, run the football, play action, then you need to be a little bit careful where you're in you're deep in your opponent's territory. That's all I'm saying, right? There needs to be caveats at times to that rule of being aggressive, because when you don't pay attention to those things, you get burnt like they did. And I know Davion Smith missed an assignment, but also I don't like to call Ball Harbaugh, so we can defer on that.
Okay.
But anyway, yes, I was talking about earlier, how we got sidetracked. I was saying that you had the apex of Harbaugh's tenure, but the last few years you see it go. You've seen it go like this. You've seen coaching staff turnover. You've seen quarterback controversy after controversy. I mean, for God's sakes, man, even when you think you have Jesus coming to your program and Shea Patterson, that a quarterback controversy starts 2 or 3 games really in his career at Michigan, right? For God's sakes, man. I mean, it's just there's just so much going wrong and not very much going right, and the writing's on the wall, and it's time. They gave it a fair shot sometimes, and I think it's taken a long time for Michigan fans to get here, as well as I think people in the administration. Sometimes you think a situation is so perfect in terms of the setup that it cannot fail. But what we all know in real life, sometimes it can fail and it doesn't work out for various reasons. And you have to be able to accept that, move forward, and look for the next thing. Because the next thing may be exactly, you may not be expecting it, but it may be exactly what you've been looking for. So that's just how I feel.
Yeah, it's true. So as far as kind of schedule goes, I think I have them at 7-5. They have a tough last 4 games of the season, man. I mean, to have Indiana, Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State, like it's difficult. And the tough part is I had them starting off pretty well because I had them losing to Wisconsin. I had them beating Washington, so they started, I want to say 6-1, something like that, 6-7-1. Oh. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So you end up losing to Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State, and then plus Wisconsin. So is that 7? Did I give them Maryland? Oof. Let's call it 8-4. If it's 8-4, do you think Jim Harbaugh comes back?
Oh, that's tough. That's really, really tough because you're going to have a lot of recency bias because of how bad last year was in the year before. And so, well, oh no, not the year before. They actually had a decent record the year before because we played Bama in the Capital Bowl 2 years ago.
Citrus Bowl, yep.
Citrus Bowl, yeah. So just how bad last year is. I went. I think recency bias. That might be enough. Like, wow, things have really turned around. But I think it depends on how the season goes at 8-4. If the Michigan's 8-4, and let's say that they go on a winning streak towards the end of the season. I mean, especially if they beat Ohio State, that would be.
If he beats Ohio State, I'm not sure he's getting fired. I just don't. I don't care if you go 500.
At this point,
if you go 500 and beat Ohio State, he is staying. Michigan fans, I want you to know, if Jim Harbaugh beats Ohio State this year, he is going to be back next year. That is definitely going to happen because it's going to be like, oh my God, we're taking off, like we're on the trajectory. We're we finally got him. Now, they had the last 10 years, 15 years. Now it's our turn. And we're, if he beats Ohio State, they're definitely hanging around.
Right. No, and it has to be something like that, like they have some upset victories against some better opponents. And it's about the trajectory, right? If they're a team that starts off a little slow, if you're seeing that building crescendo to like the following year being like, this thing's about to pop. That's one of those scenarios where I think 8-4 is like, man, that's a true sign of improvement.
They'll give him it's hard to fire a coach after 8-5. Like it happens, but it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, especially when it's a turn. Look, you go from 2-4, kind of. They had a lot of games. 2-4, because a lot of games canceled to COVID last year. And then you go from 2-4, which I think puts you on a trajectory probably as closer to 5-7, something like that. If they play the full season. or 6-6, still that's a 2-3 game turnaround. I mean that's something that warrants at least another year. So yeah, I think 8-4 could save his job.
Yeah, I agree.
Impossible. Real quick, like I had three swing games on here. So I have 6-6, but these swing games should go 8-4, 9-3. If based on how things go. Like I'm not being negative. I'm just saying, like, I just have so many question marks. My swing games: Washington, MSU, and Penn State. Like all three of those programs have question marks. We should be better than Washington, right? So we could win that game. MSU, they also have a lot of question marks, right? Maybe we split and we beat MSU. Now we're 8-4. Then Penn State, remember, Penn State went 4-5 last year. They also had a rough season. Now they beat Michigan, but it's not like they're coming off a great season too. So if Michigan wins that game, right? And now they're 9-3. I mean, there's a chance that this thing could go really well, but right now I'm kind of like being a little safe at 6-6 with a high of 8-4 to 9-3.
So I'm going through some of the comments, and Casey Schellenberg says, "Let's fire Jim so we can hire a Brady joke or another Rich Rod." So I know we have talked about the thought process or the mindset of, well, who else are we going to get? Right. What do you say to that? To that just mindset of, essentially, if we fire Jim Harbaugh, we're gonna somehow just automatically get a dumpster fire of a coach.
I love this question, and anytime I see somebody,
this is a trigger for you. That's why I brought it up.
It is. I get triggered so easily because what I would say to that person is, how many times in life do we really operate and think like that? And where it's like, man, I don't like this in my life, but I don't know if I'm gonna get any better. Not of course work, right?
Right.
A lot of us do jobs that we're not necessarily happy to wake up in the morning to go to, but pays the bills. And it's like, I don't know what else I want to rock the boat. And, okay, that's a big deal. Okay, but we're talking about football, a head football coach where he's only one of many, and you can't operate in life in fear of the unknown when you do know, based on your current situation, that you're not happy, that there is more to be desired. Focus on that. Don't accept that this program is Jim Harbaugh. No, Michigan football is bigger than Jim Harbaugh. He's just a footnote in the history of it as a player and now as a coach. But he's not the end all be all, right? We know that now. We thought he was when he first got here, but we have seen that it's not the case. So we had a fantasy when he first got here, but now we have reality. And the reality is that he's not good enough. So let's go to the unknown, where could we get worse? Possibly. But we just as well can get better, right? You can't operate like that. You have to always keep going forward. And you just never know what the wind. Shout out to Tom Hanks and Castaway. You never know what the tide may bring in. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta keep swinging for it, especially when you're at a program like Michigan. As Michigan fans, we love to have pride, right? We love to talk about this is Michigan. We hold our program up in our school and university up to such a high standard. Well, don't change that. Know that we have the resources to get whoever we want for the most part. We have the pocketbooks. We have the billionaire boosters and alumni. Put the pressure on them to not accept just being blah and continue to stride forward. That's what I would tell that person. Don't use a loser's mentality when you don't have to. Right? We're not Purdue,
Yeah, and that's
the Purdue fans out there.
I think the thing that I think about is, you look at and maybe, maybe it's not a fair comparison, but I look at the Rams and Sean McVay. Like, who knew Sean McVay was going to be a really good NFL head coach? Like, he's a young guy, one of the youngest in the NFL. I think he might have been the youngest head coach in the NFL. But nonetheless, like there's plenty. Joe Brady, Who knew Joe Brady was going to transform LSU? You know what I mean? Right. Like there's so many young minds that are out there that you can take a chance on. And that's just one side of it. There's a lot of established head coaches that would love to come to Ann Arbor and love to coach Michigan. Like it's not as if, Michigan is at odds with the administration that, they don't get the facilities that they need, or Jim Harbaugh doesn't get the recruiting budget that he needs, that he doesn't get, private jet access that he needs. Like he legitimately gets everything that he needs to be successful as a program. And I'm talking Big Ten championship, college football playoff successful. So this isn't a place where funds are tight and, we just can't do the upgrades for another 5 years. Like, I mean, that's just not the case. Like, so Michigan's not some, bottom feeder of a program to where, you're going to have to come in and work miracles. Like that's not the case. That's not where, Michigan is. And that's not the type of program they are. So I would encourage Michigan fans that, and obviously we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. We still have a head coach, but if that were to happen, like, don't get in that mindset of like, well, we can't get anybody, this is, as Brady Hoke would say, this is Michigan, for God's sakes,
have some pride. And if it happens, have some optimism that, hey, look at all these people that are out here, and you have the funds. You have to people have to understand this too. Coaches are very prideful individuals and have a sense of arrogance. All of them,
yes,
right? That I know the solution. I can be the difference. And they look at a place like Michigan, not like, oh, look at the late history of them getting killed by Ohio State. They look at it as like, wow, that's a program that has brand recognition. So I don't have to worry about. All I have to do is wear the hat, and people know who I represent. That's a program that has deep pockets. That's a passionate fan base, one of the largest football stadiums in all of sports. Yeah, I can do something with that compared to wherever I am. There's very few programs that can say over Michigan to a head coach. They can say to a prospective head coach that I can offer more than Michigan can. Right. In terms of the overall opportunity.
Right.
So you have to think like that. If you are a head coach, all the things, all the possibilities that being the head coach of the University of Michigan offers. That's how you got to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's not, like you mentioned, I'm not sure outside of maybe two programs with Alabama and Clemson might be the only two that can say they can offer a maybe that you could argue could offer more, but that's just arguing. You know what I mean? Like that's debatable. So I don't think it's clear cut, either way. So that's interesting. That's interesting. So we'll see what happens. I like I said, you just never know. And then what I will ask you as well is there any scenario where Michigan, is there any universe where Michigan, let's say, goes 10-1, one loss, and is in Indianapolis this year? Is there anywhere that could happen? Any scenario, any parallel universe?
Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, all get COVID issues and they can't play the game, and those games get rescheduled with Purdue, Illinois, Iowa, and they're no cakewalk either. Pretty much any bottom feeder team, it gets replaced with those quote unquote tougher games. That's like the only way that can happen, because it's just you to go for one. It's hard to go 10-1. I mean, like we see Ohio State, who has, I hate saying it, but gotta give them credit. They've been the king of this conference, and we see them have incredibly embarrassing losses at Purdue, getting popped by Iowa. Right, we've seen them fall, and also become very, very close to having 2 losses in a season. It's tough to do, even when you are the better team by a mile. And you talk about it all the time. To get 18 and 22-year-olds to be focused, especially when you're really good. To be focused week in and week out is not easy to do. To keep them focused on week by week, your opponent, not looking too far down the line. And so you add that job with trying to bring a new coaching staff together, trying to fill holes on your team due to turnover and inexperience. That is about as unlikely of a scenario as I can think because of all those different factors coming into play. Unfortunately, I wish we could the opposite.
But think about this, right? 2019 LSU, Joe Burrow was coming back, and he was. If you talk to anybody, that junior year he had at LSU, after that season, he was undraftable. Like people talk about that again and again. Like he wasn't even on my draft board. And then they come through, had that 2019 season. But the thing I would say is, I think there's more to a team just building every week, like just building on what you did the previous week. Because I think if Michigan handles business the way they should against Western Michigan, and I don't mean beating them badly, I mean throwing the ball, getting Cade comfortable in that offense, a good rhythm with his running backs, with his receivers, tight ends, and you beat Washington. I mean, after that, you got Northern Illinois and you got Rutgers, which I think it's possible that you go 4-0 in that time frame. And if you're able to get Cade enough throws, because I really think in today's college football, it begins and ends with your quarterback. Like he's got to play efficient, confident football. So if you can get there and beat Wisconsin, you got Nebraska after that, who is an absolute dumpster fire right now. And a bottom feeder. Like Nebraska, they shouldn't fire Scott Frost because they don't have it. Who are they?
They cheat with violations, and they still cannot help but be a bottom feeder. You know how sad that is. Like I saw that headline on ESPN. I'm like, wow, they didn't do enough. Clearly, I mean, like they can do whatever they want. It don't matter. It's a bad situation. But another thing, Desmond, about that scenario, like, so what if Michigan goes 4-0? And let me be very clear why I'm like, so what? That's fun. And don't kid yourself. In the moment, I would be very happy with that. But I've been burnt many times because Michigan, especially all 4 games are at home. Michigan tends to not have a problem with the month of September. Because unless we're playing a Notre Dame or tougher, or like a really tough opponent at the beginning of the season in the month of September, we tend to beat the lesser teams. That's a staple in the Harbaugh. The lesser teams we beat, and we beat pretty handily.
You can count on it.
When we play teams that are comparable in talent, bow, knockout punch. So that would not deter or show some kind of like, maybe this is different, because we've seen that many, many times before. It has to be 4-0, beat to Nebraska, go to 5-0, and then you go to Wisconsin and you win that game and you're going 6-0. Okay, now we're talking about something that's different, a mold breaker of the last few years, where you can say, okay, now we're getting to uncharted territory. Now I can throw out my preseason predictions or my conditioned bias of what I expect of a Jim Harbaugh season, right? Of things to fizzle out and they lose against the better opponents, right? That's what I'll have to see for me to think differently about it.
So it's got to be a show me thing for you in order to think that way.
Year 7, shouldn't it be? Shouldn't it be? I mean, like we're past the point of hope. We're past the point of optimism, and I just give you the benefit of the doubt. We're past that point. How can I do that? You haven't earned that to me, right? You don't have that window. You haven't shown me that you're some kind of great coach here at Michigan, that you can establish, that you can have these great turnaround seasons, that you can have a season that we reach the pinnacle of Big Ten success. You haven't shown me that. So why should I give you the benefit of the doubt? Case in point, D'Antonio. I can't speak, as an MSU fan, I don't know, but when they had 2016, I think they went 5-7. That's when they had what was his name at quarterback? His name was escaping me.
Was that Rocky Lombardi?
Tyler O'Connor.
Oh yeah,
okay. Right. And this is before they found Brian Lewerke, but when he was good, and then before the injury. 2016, they go 5-7. Terrible year for MSU, right? 2017, they come back with a new quarterback, Brian Lewerke. They have a bounce back year that they go 10-3, 10-2, something like that. If I was to, as an MSU fan, hey, how do you feel about going to the 2017 season? I wouldn't be panicking as much as I am as a Michigan fan, because I'm like, well, this guy has shown me that he can build a program, that he can create sustained success. So even though I'm upset, and I may even have questions about this upcoming season, I can at least bank on, you know what? I know it's possible because this guy's done it time after time. So that's kind of how I see things.
And the thing is, too, I've seen him not just build a program, but build this program, the one that he's currently at, which D'Antonio, did. And Harbaugh's, trying to do that. So well, if your prediction is correct, you're going to be looking for a new head coach next year. If you had your pick of the litter, go ahead. I was going to say, if you had your pick of the litter with coaches within reason, right? I don't think Dabo's leaving Clemson to come to Michigan, but if you had your pick of coaches, who would you want? Let's say Michigan to go after, right? Let's not say that they're going to get whoever it is, but who would you want them to go after? Who would be your short list?
Well, I mean, the guy, and I know people in the comment section may not agree with this and I know that Mark posted a clip of asking a similar question about this guy. Luke Fickell comes to mind, and because you have to think about where you are geographically. A coach that has some kind of experience with connecting with these kind of kids, a coach that has a pedigree of being a really good recruiter, and then also low-key Urban. Yeah, right. Hey man, I have no shame in my game. I'm all about winning, baby. A guy who can, who just has some kind of track record, either as being a coach and building a program, or has been connected closely to a guy who has built that program. And Luke Fickell is one of those top guys that come to mind. And I'm trying to think, who else would I go with? I would talk PJ Fleck. A guy I respect highly. I know Minnesota hasn't necessarily popped, but they've shown some signs at times of going in the right direction. And also, and I know I'm sticking Big Ten here, but you know me, man. I love Pat Fitz. I love Pat Fitz.
Yeah.
Pat Fitz.
He's not going anywhere. I think the Bears reached out to him and he's like, "Nah, I'm good where I'm at." That's incredible.
No, yeah. I mean, look, and I see. Look, I know Fickell is a Buckeye. I get it, but for me, I don't know about you guys. I care about the results on the scoreboard. I care about the wins. And I could look past his Buckeye background if he's willing to bleed maize and blue and help us win. And like I said, about Pat Fitz, man, I know he's not going anywhere, but he fits everything that I think Michigan football at its core is about: discipline, hard work, toughness, and getting the most out of yourself. I think he's everything, loyalty, right? He's everything that Michigan football at its core represents. And I would pick up the phone. I'll call Stephen Ross and any other
big time boosters,
big time booster. And I'm like, look, we need to be able to call this guy and say, name your price, and we'll match it. And
what do you think about? What do you think about that?
Mike, he definitely. The problem with Mike is that I kind of worry, and he kind of fits that mold when I say about connected to a guy who could build a program. I think Tom Allen has done a really good job at Indiana, and Mike Hart was the assistant coach under Tom Allen. That's an interesting guy option. Also, of course, he's another Mr. Michigan guy. He actually kind of heard us on MSU doing the whole little brother thing, but okay, that's whatever.
That's old stuff, man. All right, that was a young Mike Hart.
It's old stuff, but I like Mike a lot. That's a lot of nostalgia for me. A big number 20 back there running the football. But I actually think we need to get away from the Michigan man a little bit. You know, like I need a guy a little bit more of a fresh face, who's not necessarily a Michigan man, but his personality and the way he runs a program connects to the core that Michigan is about, right? So he's not talking about it; he really is about it, and he carries himself as such in a non-arrogant way, and in a way that players can pick up on the good qualities of being a quote unquote Michigan man as opposed to the perceived and talked about qualities, right? Letting
Yeah.
our past and our results speak for themselves.
Yeah. The top of my list, my first phone call would actually be, and shout out to Let's Toast Media. But that would be my choice. It's Joe Brady. That's who he's talking about, the LSU offensive coordinator and the passing game
Yeah, that's a
coordinator.
great idea.
He would be, because the thing that I think about is Michigan. It's been a long time since you've hired a young coach, and it's just, to me, there's just a difference, right? Of being a younger guy. Like, number one, Joe Brady's got cachet. Like, people know his name because of what he did at LSU. Like, think about this. LSU was just every single year, it was confusion at the end of the season when you looked at LSU that somehow had 2 or 3 losses every year, and you're like, they every single year get the best athletes in the country, and somehow they cannot put it together. And they were
NFL.
Always a run. Yeah, stud guys in NFL. But DBU, you got Honey Badger, Pat Peterson. I mean, guys all across the board. Yeah, I mean, Jarvis Landry. Like, the list literally goes on and on. Leonard Fournette, and it's just like, what is going on? Like, why can't they ever get it done? But a lot of it was that conservative offense that they played. They're just going to try to run the ball, I formation. I'll never forget. I believe that was 2016 when Leonard Fournette was just on a monster tear. He had like 3 200-yard games in a row. And then it was the big LSU Alabama, clash. And I don't even think that was LSU's last loss of that season. Like, it's just, it was silly. And then in comes Joe Brady, who at that point, I'm trying to remember if he was the offensive coordinator. I can't remember exactly, but if he wasn't, I think he was the passing game coordinator. But I mean, the guy just transformed, that school. Really saved Ed Orgeron's job, because the year before, it was not looking good for him. So I think he'd be a great selection. I think he'd be a great pick. And the Ron Favre, he's right. Joe Brady will be an NFL head coach, which I think that's what he means. But my thing is, beat him to the punch, because you and I talked about it before 2 years ago when Cliff Kingsbury was fired from Texas Tech. We had that conversation. I think I might have called you the same day and said Jim Harbaugh should be on the phone today to see if you can get Cliff Kingsbury to be the offensive coordinator at Michigan. And I think he took it was weird, but he took the USC OC job, but then said no and took the Arizona Cardinals head coaching job. But a lot of times you gotta be first to to make the call. So yeah, there's a good chance that Joe Brady probably is going to
full interview.
Is that a shot? Are you taking a shot at
guys like that? Yeah, a little try to get us. You gotta try to vet them out. Don't just hey, you sound like a nice guy. Come in here and run my offense for you. Run my offense. Come on.
Yeah,
I like this guy. Jim. I like this guy.
Yeah.
So no, it's interesting.
Eric Bieniemy, I think that's what Eric Castle meant. Yeah, I don't know if Desmond is.
So I can't go there. And the reason why, for one, we're in lockstep. I think Eric Bieniemy, his next head coaching job needs to be in the NFL. And I think for college, I have nothing against NFL guys coming to college, but I need you to have a bit more of a college background. And last few years, and I think pretty much his whole coaching career, he's only coached in the NFL. So I would prefer for you to have a little bit of college background, and especially somewhat recently. So that's why I couldn't go there, because they're the NFL coaching NFL and coaching college is polar opposites. They're so different, and you have to have some kind of understanding of the ins and outs of recruiting, how to build a program, how to connect to 18 and 22-year-olds as opposed to grown men. It's in NFL, it's a lot more of do your job, show up, you're getting paid to do this. And if you don't do your job, we'll let you go. In college, it's a lot more of a little bit more hand holding. Make sure guys are getting their classes and getting to class, doing their grades. I know the head coach isn't tracking that, but it's a lot more things to consider. Character, NFL is a league of we don't care about your character as much for the most part, unless you can, if you can play. Dante Stallworth got into a car accident and kept his job. Okay, so it's just saying, it's the truth.
Yeah,
not saying
I think
it should have happened. I'm just making a point,
I think the most important thing is, especially in college as a head coach, is being kind of that CEO. Because I think there's less to worry about, as a head coach in college versus head coach in the NFL, because you're young guys and, before NIL, you're young guys in college. Their, biggest issue is they're, missing class, right? To whereas, you got young guys in the NFL got millions of dollars at their disposal, can do whatever they want. And they, I heard a funny story that, something about like Jerry Jones keeping a cell phone under his, pillow every night because he's worried about, calls that he's going to get at 2 and 3 in the morning. Different, I'm just like, that's more rare on the college side. I think Eric Bieniemy could transition pretty easily into the to the college game. And I actually looked up his coaching career. He actually had some time in college. He was at Colorado for a year, running backs coach at UCLA for a couple of years, and before he went to Kansas City was the OC at Colorado. So it's possible. You just never know. You never know. But we'll see what happens.
He wouldn't be one of my first three choices because of just it's not having a lot of recent connections there. And I need to go. That's why. I mean, we're talking NFL, like I told you. I think he's been way overdue. But college, he's just not one of my first choices. Not due to the type of coach he is, just more or less his background right now.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that wraps it up for us, man. Any parting words you'd like to give to our folks who checked us out today?
Absolutely. Guys, everyone who's tuned in, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, conversing with you guys tonight. Please comment, like, subscribe. Once again, thank you to Mark Rogers. Thank you, Desmond, for inviting me to do what we do every day, but in front of people who care about what we care about, which is the health of Michigan football. And even the Buckeyes out there who probably hope it's terrible health, but still tuned in tonight anyway. We appreciate you as well. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong. But we will see. Time will tell. And go blue.
All right, man. Well, appreciate you joining me.
And also the Dre and Des, one more time. Please, if you like how me and Des do things, we do this all the time. We also do a podcast, Dre and Des podcast, as he talked about earlier. You can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. We talk about things in the NFL, NBA, college basketball. It's a lot more of an opened up forum. So feel free to listen to us there.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. And I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, like, subscribe. Appreciate you guys watching. Check out the Dre and Des podcast. And thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and we'll see you guys again pretty soon. Peace.